They tell you an angel's love is pure, pure light, pure devotion, pure sacrifice. But what happens when that love lands on mortal soil, takes the shape of a woman's face, and refuses to obey heaven's command to leave? In the year 1040 before the Common Era, in the highland sanctuary of Shiloh, a prophet named Eliakim held the sacred seal of covenant between his palms. The seal was a thin disk of hammered gold, inscribed with the 4 letters of the divine name, wrapped in linen that had soaked up the blood of 100 offerings. As long as Eliakim wore that seal against his chest, heaven answered his prayers. Rain came when he asked. Fire fell when he called. The elders of Israel bowed when he entered the gate.
It is time.
But there was one thing the seal could not buy, and it was the only thing Eliakim wanted. Her name was Serafina, and she was the daughter of a Philistine merchant who traded in Tyrian purple and rare spices.
The finest in the
She
market.
had come to Shiloh to purchase linen for her father's ships, but she left with something she never intended to carry. Eliakim saw her at the well outside the city walls, drawing water at dusk. The light of the dying sun tangled in her hair like strands of molten copper. He had seen visions. He had heard the voice of the Almighty from within the veil. But he had never seen anything that undid him the way her hand curved around the clay pitcher. The prophet stood at the gate and watched her walk back toward her caravan. His knees did not move, his mouth did not speak, but his soul had already crossed a line he would spend the rest of his life trying to uncross. Here's what the scrolls don't tell you about how a covenant gets broken. It never breaks in the moment of the sin. It breaks in the moment you decide you want the sin more than you want the presence that called you. Eliakim did not touch her that night. He did not speak to her. He simply watched her, and in the watching, something inside the linen-wrapped seal loosened its grip on heaven. When he returned to the sanctuary, the lamp beside the altar had gone out. No draft, no wind. The flame just died. Eliakim told himself it was a coincidence. But the incense that had burned steadily for 40 years without interruption, he could not explain that. The elders noticed first. They came to him the following morning, their faces tight with worry they did not want to name. The prayers they had offered at dawn had fallen back to earth like stones. No answer, no fire, no voice, just the cold hum of a sanctuary that had suddenly become a building instead of a dwelling place. Eliakim touched the seal beneath his tunic. It was cold. He knew what the cold meant. He had been trained since boyhood to read the temperature of consecrated metal, the way a sailor reads the sky before a storm. Warm seal meant heaven was near. Cold seal meant the connection had frayed. But cold seal did not mean the covenant was broken. Not yet. The covenant was a rope with many strands. He had frayed one strand by looking at her. One strand could be mended. One look could be repented. Eliakim fasted for 3 days. He poured water over the altar stones. He recited every prayer his father's father had taught him, the long ancestral litanies that stretched back to Moses himself. By the evening of the 3rd day, the seal began to warm again. Not hot, not the burning heat of full anointing, but warm enough. He thought the danger had passed. Then Serafina came back. She came back because she had forgotten a coil of dyed thread at the merchant's stall. That was the reason she gave. But if you read the testimony written by the elder who served as the sanctuary's chronicler, a man named Jehoash, whose account survives in fragments preserved by the Ethiopian Tewahedo Church's commentary on the Book of Enoch, Serafina had not forgotten thread. She had forgotten the face of the man who watched her at the well. She came back to memorize it. The second meeting was not at the well. It was inside the city gate, where the shadow of the sanctuary tower fell across the market stones. Eliakim was walking to the chamber where he kept the scrolls of the law. She was standing at a stall selling dried figs and pomegranates. Their eyes met. He should have turned. He should have kept walking straight into the sanctuary and bolted the heavy cedar door behind him. A prophet knows when the enemy is setting a snare, but knowing is not the same as avoiding. You know that, don't you? You have felt the shift in your chest when your conscience raises its hand and you wave it down. You know that moment when your conscience raises its hand and you wave it down anyway. That is the fracture most covenants never survive. If you want to keep uncovering these hidden transactions between heaven and earth, subscribe. Because this story does not end with a smile at the gate. And in the comments, tell me, have you ever felt that wave down moment, and what did it cost you? She smiled. Not a seductress's smile. Not a temptress's. Just a woman who had crossed a desert to see if his eyes were the color she remembered, and found that they were bluer. Eliakim spoke. He said one word, her name, and in that word, he frayed the second strand of the covenant. This is the part most people miss. The seal did not turn cold again. It stayed warm, and that is what fooled him. When heaven is about to give you up, it often lets you keep the feeling of closeness while it silently withdraws the power. You still feel the hugs. You still hear the songs. But the anointing that made your words cut like a sword, that is gone before you know you have lost it. Eliakim preached that Sabbath. The words were correct, but the congregation felt nothing. Children squirmed, men yawned, women stared at the ceiling. The fire that had drawn pilgrims from 3 territories away had become a lecture. Jehoash, the chronicler elder, wrote this in his fragment. The prophet's tongue moved, but the wind behind it had ceased. And when the Holy One stopped blowing, the people heard only a man. You need to understand what happened next, because it is the moment that pulled the third strand loose. Serafina came to the sanctuary gate that same evening. She brought an offering, a small clay lamp filled with olive oil and crushed myrrh. It was a woman's offering, the kind a poor widow would bring. She had learned from the servants that a prophet's lamp had gone out, and she wanted to replace it. She was kneeling at the outer gate, her offering in her hands, when Eliakim stepped out of the inner court. The sun was down. The only light came from the 7-branched lamp that the Levites kept burning behind the curtain. That light fell on her hands, and on the seal. Eliakim looked at the seal, he looked at her, and in that silence, the third strand broke. He did not fall into sin that night. He did not touch her. But he made a decision that the chronicler recorded with a single word in the margin of the scroll. Eskoleo. He chose her face over heaven's fire. He chose the memory of her eyes over the presence of the Almighty. And the moment a prophet chooses, the covenant begins to contract like a wound sealing itself shut from the inside. Now watch what happens. Heaven does not shout in these moments. Heaven goes quiet. The following morning, Eliakim woke to find that the seal had slipped from its linen pouch during the night. It lay on the stone floor beside his mat, face down. When he picked it up, the gold was warm. But the warmth was not the warmth of heaven. It was the residual heat of his own flesh. The seal had become a piece of jewelry, a souvenir, a shell where the spirit had once lived. He put it back on. He wore it for 7 more days. And in those 7 days, he lost everything he had spent 30 years building. He lost the voice that made rain fall. He lost the sight that saw into the heavenly court. He lost the weight of his presence that made demons flee at his approach. By the end of the week, he was a man wearing a dead man's gold. Serafina returned to the coast. She never knew what she had taken from him. She never knew that her offering had cost him his anointing. She never knew that his soul had frayed itself to a thread for the sight of her face at the well. And then the collector came. The 4th strand broke not from love, but from fear. 3 nights after Serafina left, Eliakim woke to the sound of breathing that did not belong to any living throat. The lamp in his chamber was still lit, but the light had turned the color of old bronze, thick and immobile. A figure stood at the foot of his mat. Not tall, not short, human-shaped, but wrong in the way human shapes are wrong when no soul is inside them. The figure's eyes were the color of the seal had been, gold, but cold gold, like coins that had sat in a tomb too long. Eliakim's mouth opened to speak the divine name. Nothing came out. His throat worked, but the words would not form. The seal around his neck had grown so cold it burned. The figure spoke. Its voice was dry, like dust settling after a stone falls. It said, "The altar has no claim on you anymore. The covenant was frayed by choice, and I am here to collect what heaven left behind." Eliakim knew what the figure was. He had read the descriptions in the forbidden scrolls that the elders had sealed in a clay jar beneath the sanctuary floor. A debt collector, not a demon of possession, not a fallen angel of rebellion, a specific class of watcher that patrolled the borderlands between covenant and abandonment, waiting for the moment when a consecrated soul slipped through the net of heaven's protection. The collector held out its hand. Not for a payment, not for a signature, just open, palm up, waiting. And Eliakim understood that the collector was waiting for him to offer the seal, not because the seal belonged to the collector, but because the act of offering it would complete the transaction. If he offered it, the frayed strands would snap, the covenant would end, and his soul would belong to the borderlands. Not hell, not heaven, but the gray territory where the abandoned prophets wander, still wearing the robes of their office, but carrying no fire. Eliakim did not offer it that night. He held the seal so tight that the gold edge cut his palm. The collector vanished when the dawn bell rang across the valley. But the palm wound festered within 2 days, filling with a pus that smelled of sulfur and old myrrh. The Levite who bandaged it said nothing, but his hands were shaking. The collector's open palm, waiting, not demanding, reveals something profound about how covenants end. Not by force, but by our own offering. If you want to stay with Eliakim through every frayed strand and hidden cost, subscribe so you don't lose the thread as the council closes in. And tell me in the comments, what do you think the seal would have cost him if he had placed it in that waiting hand? The elders held a council. They did not know about Serafina. They did not know about the collector. But they knew the seal was cold, and they could not burn incense in the sanctuary without the flame turning black. Jehoash wrote in his chronicle, "The prophet's hand is wounded, the lamp has gone out. The incense smells like burning flesh, and in the night, the watchers are circling the walls." They asked Eliakim to give an account. He told them nothing. This is where most people stop reading, because they do not want to face what happens to a soul that hides its wound from the very people heaven sent to heal it. If you have ever hidden a broken covenant from your community, if you have ever stood in a gathering of believers while your soul was hemorrhaging and smiled, then you already know the coldness Eliakim felt in his ribs. The seal stayed around his neck, dead weight, and the collector came back every night. The wound in Eliakim's palm refused to heal. By the 5th day, the infection had crawled up his forearm, tracing lines of black under the skin like the veins of a dead leaf. The Levite, who had bandaged him, a young man named Azariah, who still believed prophets could not fall, brought honey and wine and pressed them into the wound. The honey boiled on contact. The wine turned to vapor. Azariah stepped back and did not return the next morning. You have to understand what a covenant wound looks like when a soul refuses to confess. It is not a punishment sent from heaven. It is the natural consequence of a seal that has been separated from its source. When holy metal touches unholy flesh, the body rejects what it once carried. The wound is the seal's way of saying, "I do not belong here anymore." Eliakim wrapped his hand in strip after strip of linen, but the blood soaked through every layer before the hour passed. He stopped preaching. He stopped going to the sanctuary. He sat in his chamber, with the door barred, the seal lying on the table before him, and he watched the gold turn from cold to warm to cold again as the sun moved across the sky. The elders sent word to Jerusalem. They did not tell the high priest what had happened. They did not know what had happened. But they asked for a scroll on the laws of anointing that Maimonides would later codify in the Mishneh Torah, centuries after this moment. The section on vessels of consecration is precise. If a sacred object is worn by someone who has knowingly broken covenant, the object does not merely lose its power, it becomes a liability. It begins to carry the opposite of what it once carried. Eliakim did not know that, or he knew it and chose not to remember. The collector came every night at the same hour, not a minute before midnight, not a minute after. The sound of its arrival was always the same. The scrape of dry feet on stone, the creak of a door that had not been opened, and then the stillness that feels like the world holding its breath. The collector never touched him. It stood at the foot of the mat and waited. Sometimes it spoke. Sometimes it just stared with those gold coin eyes that reflected no light. On the 8th night, the collector said something new. It said, "You can give the seal to anyone, but the one who takes it will carry what you have frayed." Eliakim understood. The covenant was not destroyed, it was transferable. He could pass the seal to another priest, and that priest would inherit the frayed connection, the cold spots, the silence, the visits from the borderlands. The elder who wore it next would become the collector's new target. He thought about Serafina, not with longing this time, with terror. What if the collector found her? What if her visit to the sanctuary had already left a mark on her soul that the borderlands could track? Jehoash recorded that Eliakim wept that night for the first time since he was a boy. The tears fell onto the seal and sizzled like water on hot iron, even though the gold was cold. A strange phenomenon that the chronicler could not explain. But you can explain it, can't you? Because you know that tears from a broken covenant carry a salt that heaven recognizes but cannot accept. The heat is not the heat of the Almighty. It is the friction of a soul trying to reattach itself to a source it has already been cut from. The sizzle is the sound of impossibility. Eliakim stopped crying when he heard the scrape of feet outside his door. Not the collector's feet, human feet. Azariah the Levite had come back. The young man knocked 3 times, the sacred knock that prophets use when they enter the inner court. Eliakim did not answer. The Levite spoke through the cedar planks. "Master,
I have seen what is circling the walls.
I have seen the figure with the gold eyes. The elders say it is a demon, but I know what it is.
It is a debt collector.
It is a debt collector,
and it comes for those who have exchanged
heaven for
earth."
The prophet did not respond, but the seal on the table vibrated once, a low hum that made the lamp flame flicker.
You must open this door.
Azariah continued.
We are running out of time.
There is a woman at the gate. She says she is the daughter of the merchant. She says she forgot something, but she is holding a clay lamp filled with fresh oil, and her hands are shaking. Eliakim's breath stopped. Serafina was back, for the 3rd time. And this time, the collector was already inside the walls. Now watch what happens when a prophet tries to fix a broken covenant with his own strength. Eliakim stood up. He wrapped the seal in a fresh strip of linen, the same linen that had been used to bandage his wound. And he walked to the door. He opened it. Azariah stood there, young face, pale in the torchlight.
Tell her I am not here,
Eliakim said. Azariah did not move. "She knows you are here, master. She saw you in the window. She says she has to give you the lamp herself. She says it is anointed." Eliakim laughed. It was not a joyful laugh. It was the sound of a man who realizes that the net has been closed from all sides. Anointed lamp. Serafina did not know what the word meant. She had called her offering anointed because she had heard the Levites use the word, and it sounded holy to her ears. But heaven does not accept ignorance as innocence. The law is clear. An unqualified person who touches anointed things invites the weight of the covenant onto themselves. If Serafina handed him that lamp and he touched it while the seal was cold, the anointing would not flow. It would snap. Eliakim walked to the gate. He saw her standing in the moonlight, the clay lamp cupped in her palms like a trapped bird. She smiled, that same smile, and he felt the seal around his neck pulse with the heat of a dying ember. One last flicker of warmth, one last chance to turn back. He reached for the lamp, and the collector stepped out from behind the gatepost, placed its dry hand on Eliakim's wrist, and said, "This is not your offering to receive.
But the journey ahead is
This
fraught
is her
with peril.
offering, and she is not
What
under
is it
covenant.
you truly desire?
She does not know what she carries. If you take it, you condemn her to carry what you have frayed." The prophet froze. His hand hovered over the lamp. Serafina did not see the collector. She did not hear the voice. She saw Eliakim reaching, and she smiled wider, thinking he was accepting her gift. She had no way of knowing that the gift she offered was the rope that would bind her to a debt collector for the rest of her life. This is the part that makes even the elders weep when they read Jehoash's account. Eliakim pulled his hand back. He did not take the lamp. He told her to leave.
This cannot continue.
He told her to return to the coast
For the sake of
and
my
never
house,
come back
you
to
must
Shiloh.
go now.
He said the words with a voice that was steady, but his eyes were drowning. Serafina's smile fell. She set the lamp on the ground at his feet. She turned. She walked out through the gate, her sandals scraping the stone, and she did not look back. You just watched Eliakim make the hardest choice a covenant keeper can make. He let her walk away to save her from a debt she could not see. If that moment landed in your chest the way it does every time the elders read it aloud, then subscribe to keep walking through these gates with us. Because what happens next is not a quiet departure. The lamp stays, the oil burns, and the collector smiles for the first time. Drop a single word in the comments, the one that describes what you felt when Serafina set the lamp down and turned without looking back. But the lamp stayed, and the oil inside it had been mixed with myrrh, the same myrrh that the Levites used in the sacred anointing oil. Serafina had purchased it from a merchant who sold to the temple. She had no idea what she was handling. The collector looked at the lamp, looked at Eliakim, and smiled. The first time it had smiled in all those nights of visitation. Now the offering is on sacred ground without a consecrated hand to receive it, the collector said. The law of the altar is broken. The lamp is a debt, and debts must be paid by the one who brought them into the sanctuary. Eliakim fell to his knees. He understood. The covenant was not frayed for him alone anymore. Because Serafina had offered an anointed object without authority, and he had refused to receive it, the debt attached itself to her. She was now a woman walking toward the coast, with a debt collector's mark on her soul that she did not know existed. The seal around his neck went cold, permanently cold. The kind of cold that never warms again, not even from body heat. Jehoash wrote the final entry in his chronicle 3 days later. He wrote that Eliakim left Shiloh in the middle of the night, taking the seal with him. He did not tell anyone where he was going. He left the lamp that Serafina had offered, sitting on the altar, untouched, burning with a flame that the Levites could not extinguish. It burned for 40 days straight, a green flame that gave no heat. And when it finally went out, the sanctuary felt empty in a way it had never felt empty before. Not abandoned by God, but abandoned by the last man who had known how to reach heaven. The elders sealed Jehoash's chronicle in a clay jar and buried it under the altar. They said a prayer over it. They chose a new prophet, a man named Obadiah, who had never seen a woman at a well, who had never let his eyes rest on anything but the law and the altar. Obadiah wore a new seal, hammered from the same gold, inscribed with the same 4 letters. But the new seal never grew as warm as Eliakim's had been. The elders noticed. They said nothing, because the truth they could not speak was this. When a prophet falls, the anointing does not simply transfer. It shatters. Some fragments land on the next prophet. Some land on the ground. And some fragments fall into the hands of women who do not know what they are holding, carrying lamps of myrrh-mixed oil toward a coast where a debt collector is already waiting for them on the shore. If you have ever wondered why some people seem to carry a weight they never chose, why some souls walk through life with a shadow that does not belong to them, you have just seen the mechanism. A covenant is not a private contract between one man and heaven. It is a web. When one strand snaps, the vibration travels through the whole grid, touching people who were never part of the original knot. Serafina lived to old age on the coast. She married a merchant. She had children. But the Levites who passed through her city noticed that she never entered a temple again. She would stop at the gate, look inside, and turn away. She could not explain why. She only said that the light inside reminded her of a lamp she had once left at a prophet's feet. And somewhere in the borderlands, a collector still holds the thread that connects her great-grandchildren to that night in Shiloh. The seal Eliakim carried. No one knows where it is. Some say he threw it into the Dead Sea. Some say he buried it under a terebinth tree on the road to Jericho. But the Ethiopian Tuahedo Church preserves a tradition that the seal was never destroyed.
It was found by a shepherd in the 2nd century before the Common Era, and it was sold to a Roman merchant who wore it as a pendant and died of a wasting fever within the year. Then it disappeared again. The anointing is not a thing you can hold. It is a fire that burns where it chooses. But when a prophet trades that fire for the sight of a woman's face at a well, the fire does not go out. It goes elsewhere. And the gold it once burned through becomes a shell that carries death and cold currency.
waiting for the next hand, brave enough or foolish enough to pick it up. Your hand is reaching toward something right now. You may not know what it is. You may call it love or opportunity, or the one thing you have been waiting for your whole life. But ask yourself this: is the seal around your soul still warm? Or have you been wearing cold gold for so long that you have forgotten what fire feels like?